chapter 7 already, so let's get started. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Creator of all things, true source of light and wisdom, origin of all being, graciously let a ray of your light penetrate the darkness of my understanding. Take from me the double darkness in which I have been born, an obscurity of sin and ignorance. Give me a keen understanding, a retentive memory, and the ability to grasp things correctly and fundamentally. Grant me the talent of being exact in my explanations, and the ability to express myself with thoroughness and charm. Point out the beginning, direct the progress, and help in the completion. Through Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. So it's great to be back. So after last week's topics, the first topic of this anthropology course on the human being, the human person as a microcosmos, as this orderly array of different levels of life, of sensibility or passions, and the will and the intelligence. And now we go into the second topic, which has to do with ethics, with the roots of good and evil. Now I'm going to start off with this question. How are good and evil determined? Which, if you want, is one of the fundamental questions of all the history of philosophy. And still today is maybe one of the most debated things on earth in our culture. How do we determine what is right and wrong? Almost all the debates on TV, on public, on politics in many ways are turned around these issues of morality. What is right and wrong? Is abortion right or wrong? Is same-sex marriage right or wrong? All these, the hot-button issues are really around this question, which is as ancient as humanity, I would say. Already Socrates and Plato had this very lively debate with other people in Athens in the 4th century before Christ. So nothing new here with the question. So what are the possible responses to this philosophical question? How do we determine this? Well, there's a first position that is, if you want, the atheistic worldview, which basically states the following: God does not exist, therefore everything is permitted. I recall, I think this is literally quoted by a couple of people. Dostoevsky in The Brothers Karamazov has one of the characters there, Ivan Karamazov, say this, I think. If God does not exist, then everything is permitted. And a philosopher that pretty much would state this position was Sartre, Jean-Paul Sartre, the French existentialist philosopher. We might disagree with him, but something we cannot deny is that Sartre was very consistent in his philosophy. He said, well, there cannot be a moral order out there because there was no one to put it there in the first place. The only way you can be moral, he said, Sartre would say, right, is be consistent with yourself. If you choose a certain path, your freedom defines morality for you. So as you go through life blazing your trail, if you want, just follow that consistently. Now, why he said that, I don't know, because there's no foundation for that either, but he said you should be consistent. Another version of that would be Nietzsche, right? Friedrich Nietzsche would be another philosopher, and nihilist philosopher who said, well, there's no God, therefore there's no moral order. There was no one there to put it there in the first place, right? And the Übermensch, the Superman, is the one who is beyond good and evil. Good and evil are, Nietzsche would say, an invention of the weak to protect themselves from the strong, right? But the strong spirits would be those that could go beyond that limitation of morality, of good and evil. Now, that would be, if you want, a bolder response to this question. One of those extreme, very bold responses, more a cavalier response. But I think there's kind of a softer response to this question, which would be the response to cultural relativism, which would avoid the extremes of saying, well, there's no good and evil, because people would say, well, good and evil are useful to society, right? It's helpful for people to respect laws, to respect certain guidelines for life. It's important that families honor their commitment to each other, that traffic laws are kept, that taxes are paid, that promises are kept, that treaties are followed, that we pay what we spend, that we're committed to pay for a service, and so on. So these things are useful for society. If we simply do away with good and evil, we're going to have collapse. So they go to this softer response, saying, well, let's not carry it to a very hard extreme, but let's say that good and evil are kind of useful boundaries and useful guidelines that we establish. How do we establish them? Well, basically through consensus. Right. So good and evil basically is something that is established there because it's useful, and it's mostly the method through which it is established is by consensus. Now notice one thing, that people in this view would say good and evil are nothing in themselves. We put them there as long as they are useful. But if we would agree at one point that, I don't know, cheating on your spouse would be fine, well, then it's fine. There's nothing in itself that makes it just or unjust. Simply that now we find that it helps society be stable, develop, and grow, and so on. Now, obviously, that changes with time and according to the groups. The problem with this point, that if good and evil are nothing in themselves, they're simply that which we deem useful and helpful, well, the usefulness is different according to the group you belong to. If you're an investor and you own a business, well, you want certain taxes to work this way, and you want people to respect your business, and so on. So certain laws of good and evil are certainly useful for your business, but maybe if you're married, for you certain laws are useful to protect marriage, but for other people it may not be the case. And so what this position ends up leading into is a sort of power struggle. Different groups want different guidelines for society, and so they end up kind of clashing with each other, and the one that yells the loudest, they get their way, and they kind of impose their guidelines, or they come to a compromise of what's desirable. And then consensus, of course, as the method. So we come to this, well, different lobbies will argue, will debate, will advocate for different groups, and they will, promote different interests. And finally, we have the laws that are a result of all of this consensus of different power groups. Now, another important, or if you want, another important issue there is what happens with the border between the public and the private. Usually laws are, what we enact as laws are usually confined to the realm of the public, of issues of justice, of businesses and the state, and education and security and so on, right? They don't regard the more private life of individuals, because people say, well, as long as you don't mess with public affairs and the functioning of society at large, then at home you can do whatever you want, right? The point is that there's not just such a clear-cut demarcation between those issues. Usually, private behavior of individuals will eventually, in the long run, and the more they become prevalent, they will impact society. Obviously, for example, marriage has an impact in society, and so even though we cannot regulate by law the behavior in a marriage, the breakdown of marriage does have an impact in society. You can say, well, I educate my children, but if you suddenly decide not to send them to school and not to educate them, don't give them any education, well, the social worker might come and say, you have to provide an education, you have to show the society and the state that in some way your children are getting educated. Homeschooled or going to school, but you have to prove that. You cannot just leave them without knowing how to read and write and so on, right? Because there's an interest in society. It's not simply something that happens privately in my home. It is something private, but it has an impact in society. Or I say, well, I can drink at home and don't hurt anyone. Well, but the moment I step out of my home and start yelling in the streets or driving drunk, well, that's not so much, it's not so private anymore, right? It can cause a lot of damage. So you see the line demarcating the public and the private is not always, in some issues it's quite clear, in some issues, but in some of them there's an easy crossing of the line, because obviously private life of individuals does impact society in the long term. And laws of the state, civil law, will only deal with the public. What is the law that keeps society running from the grassroots, if you want? And that aspect of all that moral behavior that is private, that is in your heart, that is in the family, that is among friends, that the state cannot regulate. But it's like if you want, the grassroots of all those values that sustain society. So we only keep the level of the laws that are obtained by consensus. We are left with, well, this chunk of area, this big area that is public affairs, that has all these regulations, but the underlying areas of private life and the behavior of each individual is left in a void. Right? And it cannot function that way. So those are two very, especially the second one of cultural relativism, are very, very prevalent. They would say basically that, each culture and each time in history will develop their own morality. And because there's no good and evil are nothing in themselves, then every culture creates their own values. And basically you get it from education, right? So the values you're educated in, it's the values you adopt as good and evil. That's it. Now there's a third position. If you want, the first two agree on there being no objective moral values. A third will be the consideration that there are objective moral values. That I will argue is the one in line with Christian morality. Many philosophers, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and I would argue many others, the ancient Greeks and Plotinus and many great philosophers, aside from Christianity, also Christians and also Jewish philosophers have argued that good and evil are objective. They're not simply a human creation, but rather they are discovered. They are gradually discovered, deepened, just like we discover the order of the universe through science. We also discover the way the human heart functions by observation and experience of life and trial and error at times. Now, why is that? How is it possible? How is it possible that some behaviors have that stamp of good and evil, even before we try them? Even some things are so clear-cut in that regard that we can even say, well, that's wrong, even though I have never tried doing that to prove it wrong or evil. Right? The argument that these philosophers bring is the following. They say, Christians too, right? Is that this order of good and evil was basically placed in reality by God. There is an order in human affairs that precedes the use of our freedom. In other words, we don't act and therefore create value. But there's already a sort of established order in human things before we decide to act. And the language the philosophers use is that God in creating things and in creating human beings places an essence in each thing. Right? Each thing has, philosophers say, an essence or nature, which are pretty much synonyms there. What is an essence? An essence is that which makes a thing be that one thing and not another one. It's what makes this particular thing fall under a certain species, have certain properties, have certain rules of behavior, certain traits. It's the result of creating something with a certain order and harmony, right? If you want, an analogy of that in human creations. Imagine you're an engineer who designs a car. So you design, well, it's going to have this capacity, this speed, this autonomy, this mileage per gallon. It's going to have this type of motor. It's going to have this. It's going to use this type of fuel. And you're going to design, as an engineer, you design that car, how it's going to work. Well, by the result of that, you say, well, this car is going to fulfill its purpose. You have all this quality, it's going to drive you, it's going to give a smooth ride and all that. But the engineer is going to say, you have to respect certain things because of the way I made this car. You had to use this kind of fuel, you had to use this type of oil. You had to give it this maintenance after 5,000 miles and so on. You know, lay out, this is the way this machine works, right? If you choose not to respect that, well, it's going to deteriorate, it's going to break down. Right? It doesn't run on kerosene, it doesn't use olive oil. So you have to respect the way it's done. And something similar could be said in God. God says, I designed the human heart to work in this way. You might choose to use it another way, but it doesn't work. It's going to deteriorate, it's going to cause trouble. So for example, I created your heart to share life with others. Not to live it in a selfish way, but to love other people. To be open to them. Not to live in hatred, in anger, in tension, constant tension. I didn't create it that way. So if you set out to live that way, that, in a selfish attitude towards people around you, well, that's not going to work. You may set out, people may decide to live that way, and live in competition, trying to prove everyone else inferior to me. But there's something in that life that is not going to work. And not because there's simply this arbitrary guideline out there saying you shouldn't be selfish or you shouldn't be a jerk. It's because there's something in your own spirit that says so. That your soul does not function that way. And when you try to make it work that way, it just doesn't work. It creates a sort of suffering, sort of lack of peace. As we said last time, when we thought about the different levels of human life, if you distort, there's a reason why there's a certain hierarchy or connection between those levels. If we turn them upside down or distort that order, there's going to be a pain and a sort of restlessness with it. So what is the definition of good and evil in this position? Every behavior, every thought, every word, every behavior that, if you want, follows the inclination of your essence or brings your who you are, your essence, to its fulfillment. Any behavior that respects the order that you have is a good one. Any behavior that does not respect that order is evil. Anything that goes against the way you're made to function. If I choose to center my life around money and possessions, well, I may choose to do that. Now, my life was not thought by God to work that way. And that's never gonna make me completely happy. It may bring some pleasure, some excitement, but it's never gonna give me deep peace and happiness. Money cannot be the end goal of my life in the way that loving God and loving others is. Sorry, I forgot to put some of the lines here. Some of the definitions. The essence is something that the essence of something is what makes the thing be what it is, not something else. Okay, how do we come to know good and evil? What helps us determine good and evil in this position? Classic philosophy, Thomas Aquinas, they speak about two indicators or two tools to guide us. One is internal, the other external. Okay, the internal one is conscience. It's defined as an act of judgment by which a behavior is deemed right or wrong. So Aquinas defines conscience as an act of judgment, basically. which says, well, is this action right or wrong? Now, it's not that I have to resolve to make that act of judgment. It comes by itself. Judgment has, conscience has this property that is kind of a bit independent from my desire. I may choose, I may want to, I don't know, cheat on my exam. And I don't want to think about the morality of that action, but something in me says, you're doing wrong. You know you're doing wrong. And then I think, I'm going to do it anyways. I do it, and then this voice keeps saying, you know, you did wrong. Because I cannot just simply twist it. Now, could conscience fail? There's different things on this. I think conscience can be sort of deadened. It can be... I think it's not easy for conscience to fail, but it's certainly possible not to listen to it for a long time, and therefore to become disconnected from that voice. To learn how to disregard it completely, right? And instead of conscience to put there, I don't know, for example, the approval of people, public opinion. So, well, this seems rather right, you know, or people today think that this is okay. The other voice of conscience is kind of pushed into the closet, and this other voice is put in its place. You know, it seems like people now say it's great to do this. There's many cases in history which is you've seen that how possible it is for public pressure in society to kind of cower conscience into a corner and to you know, what people approve or what is imposed through fear takes now the place of conscience. Now, many great minds have pointed out that conscience is like it's a guiding tool that is itself guided. It needs a frame of reference. So it's like a GPS. A GPS guides you in navigation, but it's not self-referential. It needs satellites. It needs other people, other tools to tell you where you are and where you're going and so on. So your GPS, if you lose satellites, well, you don't have any way to guide yourself. Conscience also is like it's a norma normata, or it's a measuring tool that is measured from the outside. So conscience gets its reference from that order that God established in the world. God gave us, God established this kind of roadmap, and then gave us this kind of GPS in our hearts to discover that and guide us. Now, if our conscience gets disconnected from that framework, if we don't form our conscience, if we don't reflect, if we let the voices of fear and peer pressure crush conscience, then that GPS is like not functioning anymore. So that could happen. Now, I don't think that happens quickly and easily. Like, the voice of conscience is pretty persistent, but it can be certainly pushed down. And other people ask, can faith take the place of conscience? Can the Bible and Revelation take the place? Of course, yes. I think we need. I would say faith does not replace conscience, does not replace that sense of good and evil, but it reinforces it. Faith comes to kind of, if at times fear or this pressure to conform to wrong behaviors is pushing our conscience it's pushing us not to listen to conscience. Faith is kind of helping us reinforce and form conscience. I think the only risk here is we shouldn't take a fideistic attitude. This attitude of thinking, well, I do things just because the Bible says so, right? Just because it's the teaching of the church. There's a risk in doing that, because we believe that we follow God's revelation, because at the same time, this is what God created us to be. Right? We are following God's voice because it coincides with our deepest reality, with who we are. Right? It's not that God is commanding me to, stand on my head for 2 hours a day. My head turns red. It's not that God is deciding these arbitrary things that I have to do because just He wants it in a completely voluntaristic way. No, God commands me, asks me to do ultimately what is to my greatest benefit. There's a great coherence between what God created me to be, the kind of the structure of reality, and what He says He's asking me to follow. Right? So in that sense, we as Catholics, we deviate from that tradition that is faith alone, right? Just, well, God will command you. And I know some of you will ask me about Abraham. That's kind of the real question is the sacrifice of Abraham here. But I would say by and large, Catholic morality, Catholic teaching on this is our behavior is ruled by reason, by that recent discovery of what is in accordance with human nature. And by and large, revelation will basically tell you, do those things. Follow your conscience, respect others, love others, forgive, overcome anger, and any sort of lack of control and so on. Well, law would be the external guide. Okay? Law is important in society, in the church, in society, because it provides that external framework that guides us. And it's also important, especially considering that many times it's not easy for us to keep our rudder. Okay, the rudder. It's not easy to keep it steady many times. We live in a stormy world, and to keep that rudder steady in the course of what is good is many times very challenging, right? So many times we have that external voice of law saying, no, you should never go that route. That's a really bad route. It's important to have that external reinforcement to it, whether that makes sense or is completely stupid. Right? And you feel like completely left alone. Like if I had to say to my friends when I'm 15, guys, I don't want to do what you're doing because it's dangerous or whatever, it's not really good for us. They're going to say, oh, you're an idiot. Just to have that voice of my parents behind me telling, you're not going to do that. It's kind of reassuring, because even though I kind of grumble against them, in the end I say, well, it doesn't have to be me being the jerk that is telling my friends, I'm here in the name of conscience telling you. There's someone behind me saying, that's it, you have no choice. And at that age, I probably need that. Well, that's a bit how law works. Many times, it's so easy to fall in the easiest route and to yield to pressure of someone else. Well, we need to get this business done, just do that. Well, it's not right, but no matter, it doesn't matter, just do it. Since we need the law to tell us, you're not going to do that. There's a fine for that, or that's a federal crime, and so on. Now, also, just like conscience, laws could occasionally also be flawed. We have examples in our own culture of abortion and so on, but in every nation, every culture in history, in every empire, there have been laws that have been wrong because they would not conform to the order God established. Now, but by and large, the church has always encouraged us to respect the law, to respect. There may be exceptional cases where civil laws or human laws are flawed, are not in accordance with that broader order God established. But in general, by and large, we should respect the law. And a clear sign of that is St. Paul says to, I think it's Romans 13, and there's other passages where he says, respect the civil authorities. There, and Peter, I think 1 Peter, authorities are there to punish criminals. And they will do that, they will do it. So if you behave correctly, the authorities have nothing against you. Now, keep in mind they were saying this in the Roman Empire that was persecuting Christians. It was not that government was friendly towards them. Still, St. Peter and St. Paul talk about that respect for civil authority. Right? Okay, I think we got to. Let me make one more corollary, and I will. Let's go to some questions. But I wanted just to mention something about repression, because some people might say, well, Catholic morality is always repressing your natural impulses, your instincts, the way you want to do things. I would say that's not the accurate way to put it. Many times, to follow God's voice in your life, to follow His guidance, to follow your conscience, you do have to say a no to an impulse. I want to eat that right now. But my conscience or other people say, no, it's not the time to eat. Or I want to drink this much. It's not good. You have to say no to that. But it's not so much that God wants to repress our impulses, but rather re-funnel them or reorder them in the right direction. If you want, the best graphic example is what we read last week about the lizard and the stallion. Right? That appetite that is, once it's kind of healed and rectified or reordered, it uses its strength not against us, but for us. There's nothing wrong in the good pleasure of drinking a good wine or beer, but there's a measure for that. It doesn't make you lose control. It doesn't lead you into an addiction. It's not there to cover other problems, but it's there to give you the right amount of joy that comes with a good glass of wine. Right? Nothing wrong with sexuality. It's a good thing created by God, but it's the expression of love in a relationship where there's commitment, right? There is marriage. It's not there just as a sort of entertainment, especially for college years and so on. If I use all those powers, if I use, there's something good in possessing things, in growing in wealth, there can be even excitement, but those things, growing in possessions and wealth and investments, that enables you to do good to your family, to others, to society, provide jobs. But if you use it just to satisfy that hunger for possessions and wealth and luxury and showing off, well, it's not going to be a good thing. It's not going to help you, ultimately. So, Catholic morality is never about crushing human desires, but rather kind of directing them in a good way. And all this, all the great saints have said that. St. Augustine, for example, evil, things of this world, none of them are evil. But all of them are good. They can be misused, though. You can pursue relative evils as absolute ones, and therefore turn them into bad things. Because we, for example, turn pleasure into my God, into an absolute thing. Well, it's not meant to be that. It's meant to have its proper place. If I'm having a dinner with good friends or family, Thanksgiving, and my sole focus and complete absorption is with how great this turkey is, and it's just my whole attention and my emotions are just focusing, I'm going to get the most pleasure from this turkey I can. Well, I'm going to be such a nasty table guest, right? I'm going to be not really the most pleasant person to be around at that dinner. Because I'm turning this innocent, good pleasure of having a good meal into something that is not meant to be. It's completely out of place, out of proportion, right? Okay, so let's have some time we have some conversation here. Let's do some Q&A time, then we'll have the time to read the second text and work a bit in the groups.
Well, we have first questions.
Yes.
Do you want me to start?
Please. Start us off.
No, I really like it. I don't have many issues with what you said or any of them, but I'm always wondering about has the church changed its moral teachings over time, and since you were saying there is the satellites that lead your GPS, and your GPS is your conscience, and you expect our conscience to be guided by the moral teachings of the church. And if the moral teachings of the church in some cases have changed over history, how do we know that we have the right compass?
Right. But my response. So have you all listened to the question? Have moral teachings of the church changed over time?
I had some examples. Maybe
yes.
Slavery was a clear one. Usury is another.
I was thinking of those.
Yeah.
No, I would say by and large. I mean, the general response or gist you should get from the church itself is no. Look at what the gospel says basically is consistent. What we have in the Gospels and what the Lord teaches is pretty consistent. And in the Ten Commandments, basically from the time of Moses, we pretty much follow those guidelines. What I think where you find some adaptation to that is when society changes, when the structures of society change. And I would say, for example, slavery, I don't want to go in too deeply into those, I'm also not an expert on that aspect, but I would say that you never find in scriptures a verse saying it's okay to adopt, to take slaves, to buy slaves, or it's okay, you should sell yourself into slavery, or should. I think rather it was an evil that was kind of accepted, an evil situation that was kind of there, and the Christian solution was never about let's do a revolution and free the slaves. That kind of Spartacus kind of mentality, let's just revolt against this whole thing. That was never the Christian way of dealing. It was more rather within this kind of social order that has a lot of, kind of not very clear things or not very good things. Let have this. St. Paul would say, treat a slave as if he was your brother in the faith. Like Onesimus and Philemon. And an interesting letter to read in that regard is Philemon and Onesimus. So he would say, respect the laws, the guidelines or the laws of the culture right now. At the same time, the Bible would affirm the equality of the dignity of all human beings. It said, for Christ there's no slave or free man. But the way Christians dealt with that was not, let's start a revolution. It was more like, treat one another. Obey your masters as if you would obey Christ. Treat your slave as your brother with that dignity that he has or she has. That was the way of dealing with it. So you get a sense from those phrases and those guidelines that it never was something kind of completely okay, but I think it was more like, be careful that a revolution, that revolting so strongly against it doesn't turn everything, it doesn't make it become worse.
But usury was considered wrong, and now it's considered, to some extent, the 5% was in the 15th century.
So to that, yes. I would say, it's usually social changes, and I think the church wants to. So with usury, it's still an evil. Like if you extort, if you were to demand an excessive interest, you take advantage of a person's situation to demand excessive interest, that's still a wrong doing. I think the difference goes that in most cases of loans in the ancient times, the Middle Ages, it was all things you would basically consume, and you couldn't produce nothing out of them. If I gave you like all this amount of food or clothing, you couldn't. In the most part, the finance production of goods didn't work in a way that you would receive this loan and basically make more out of them. It would be more like, take this and use it. There was no reason why I should receive more of them in the end. Now, that changed with the creation of like capital investment, the idea that you could use money to produce more money. Therefore, it became reasonable that of the goods you could gain with the loan you receive, you should give the person who lent you the money part of that gain, right? That's the idea of investment and loans and banking. And there was an evolution because the economic situation changed in that regard. So it's money and began to be used in a different way than it had been before. Like finances in the ancient times or economics were based on owning land, basically. You were a landowner, you had these fields, you had this many slaves, this many things. Well, you were rich, right? It was not about getting credit but that changed with the introduction of banking investment. And so therefore, because of the economic change, there was also a reasonable acceptance of some level of interest in a loan. But still an excessive interest is considered usury today. So I would say that some social changes prompt a different consideration of what it is that I'm doing. So interest on a loan would not be simply usury, but it could be a legitimate one. Right? So again, I'm not an expert, so that's how much I can say about that one. But, I think that it's fair to say that by and large we keep the same moral principles as Catholics. Church hasn't said, well, this was okay back then and now it's completely changed. In general, Catholic morality has stayed pretty much consistent. Now there are new issues too. There are new issues that were not there before. The use of internet, social media. Well, a lot of things are just new, and I had to apply the same principles to new situations.
Are you suggesting that conscience is inherent in everyone, not taught by parents or society?
Well, I would say it's both inherent and taught.
So the boy who was raised by wolves, would he have a conscience similar to?
I think he has the ability, but in a defective state, just like that boy would have an ability for language, it has not been very developed, right? So
Right.
I think conscience is an ability to perceive that has to be kind of developed. We have an ability to articulate language, but it doesn't come to us without being around language, right? So conscience also develops with a sort of education in perception. When you are like naughty and as a 2-year-old and mom says, no, you shouldn't do that. You know, like, that's not the right way to treat your brother. Or and we kind of incorporate things and realize it does make sense. You know, I don't want my brother to treat me like that. And so slowly we started understand and acquire that good sense. Right? It's like an ability of reasoning about values and about good and evil. That the ability is there. It's like a mind. But it's not fostered if it's not educated. So if you don't go to school and learn how to read and write, you leave many powers of your mind underdeveloped, basically. And a similar thing happens to conscience. But I think most human beings get some moral training. You know, that's the customary thing that your family will educate you, give you some guidance. And so that's what's so tragic when someone grows without any guidance. A person grows without any parents or in an abusive situation because they really are very much in conflict. They are really much confused and there's this conflict within them because they know there's supposed to be some sort of good order, and they just sense that everything around them is chaos or is lack of love or lack of protection, and they just they grow with a sense that I'm living in a way that shouldn't be, but that's how I grew up. I don't know what else should I do. So it's a bit of an inner conflict, I think. Let's go here to the and to Jacob.
You said that Aristotle and Plato, they argued that objective morality is gradually discovered. Is that personally or as a society also?
So in Plato and Aristotle, there is an objective morality and gradually discovered.
Right. The concept of gradually discovering morality.
Right.
Is that society will also gradually discover that in the case of the chosen, like you see.
Right.
Over time they got.
Yeah, that's a very complex. I mean, it's different in Aristotle and Plato. I would say they would both, I think, say that a lot of wisdom in moral behavior was you learn from what they call the ancients. So they have both an idea that from the religious maxims you learn from ancient prior times, you could gain moral wisdom. They get a sense when you read them many times. They're really timely today, because when you read them, this is 4th century Athens, right before Christ. And they get a sense that many of their expressions sound like, oh boy, we really are in a bad shape. We come from like a good moral order in humanity, but things have really gone down. You get a sense that there's a sort of progressive destruction of the fabric of society. So exactly what happens to us today, it was say 2,500 years ago. So there's a sense in them that there was an ancient golden age, a time where people knew how to do things and what was right and wrong, and it's more contested every day. So I don't know how to phrase the evolution of what they thought would happen. I would say both of them have a good sense that there is a sort of order in not just in the human heart, but in the universe. Plato said we should live according to the ideas of justice and the good that are beyond this empirical world. And this whole universe is like a faint reflection of that world ideas that is divine. And that's why this reality is always changing and never stable. But that world is the true world of the really real, the ontos on. And this world, our lives should imitate those ideals if we want to belong to that world of the divine, right? Of the gods and ideas and the idea of the good. That's what Plato. Now, I don't know if I could explain them. I haven't read the whole work to begin with, so I couldn't really say in all their corpus whether there's a progression. But Plato believed very much in both an individual and a social good. That's why the Republic is pretty much the laws and the Republic are, if you want, treatises, like political treatises. And Aristotle also wrote the ethics and the politics. The ethics was more for family, social, and personal ethics, but politics was the ethics of the polis, the ethics for the city, for the state, the city-state, right? So they would consider both were essential, and they both see a sort of moral problem that needs to be addressed. Yeah.
So society moves on with different issues, let's say same-sex marriage, and I, being a biologist, could not understanding that it's not a choice, could not disapprove of it. And the church tells me to disapprove. And so there's more and more issues like that. There are, of course, issues that kill, theft, very obvious, but there are subtle issues where you, so where is my conscience in that? I cannot condemn anybody for sexual orientation. So am I a sinner because I can't, or I just, it brings several issues like that.
Right. But I don't think things have changed in as far as.
And especially when law approves something, so
right.
Then you have.
Correct. I think it's social perception and acceptance has changed, not the problem itself. The problem of same-sex attraction has been there from day one. When you read the old, like Abraham, it was already there. Like 300,000 years ago, the same issues are there. I think it's how you assess the situation. And there's basically one position that says, well, it's part of reality. And so we now call it normal. Or you say, well, there seems to be same-sex attraction, a sort of mismatch between sexual attraction and your own biology. There seems to be like a kind of soul-body mismatch there, right? There's something that's not completely right and healthy. Why is that? Well, we can analyze why it happens, how you help people in that situation. But you could say, well, let's just say it's part of reality, and that's normal, and that's it. The risk, I think, is if that's not really part of the order of the human heart, if there's something just simply like out of kilter, and we just you continue just making progress in that, saying, well, let's just pretend it's fine and just act on it. It can grow worse, and it can cause more pain. Right? So I think that's the risk we're into. I think it's about realizing that sense of morality. So there's a person who's not. I would say most people are experiencing some sort of same-sex attraction are not at fault in the sense of they're not deciding to experience that. Now, but you can decide what to do with it. Are you going to establish simply a couple, a lifestyle like that, to marry a same-sex person, a person of the same sex, and just live that way and have children? Or are you going to say, well, I think I don't agree with that. That should be my lifestyle because I feel this inclination many times, And that it's not black and white. Sexual attraction is not like a binary thing. Like you can just say, well,
Right.
it's either black or white. I mean, there's different degrees. Some people have it fluctuates through their life. In some cases, it's vice. There's I think very solid research has shown that many times the same-sex attraction is connected to some sort of trauma or unfulfillment in an area. That it's not simply an expression of your deepest core, but it's a sort of kind of blockage of some sort of good development of your emotional life, either by some trauma, by some neglect, by some rejection, wounds received, and so that not it's not always.
Just an example, you know.
Yeah, I agree. I don't want to enter into the whole thing, but the point is, I think it's important to. I think it's a good thing to think about the issue and can try to say, why does God say that in the Bible? Is it simply that He says, is this kind of rule that says you can act this way no matter what, or there is some wisdom in it that basically works in our favor? I think that's the Catholic position. It's not that God is saying, no, we're going to do this no matter what, but rather I'm asking you to live in a way that's going to bring human thriving and not crushing, right? And at times it might be hard to rectify or to make amends, to bring things to the right. It can be painful to do that. It's not always. I think that doesn't guarantee that it's going to be easy and painless, but ultimately it's going to help us. Right? Sebastian, what?
So kind of branching off that, are we really called to condemn anyone for their lifestyle choices or the way that they choose to live? Because every single one of us has some sort of fault that we can work on before going and condemning someone else for the way that they're living. And then also I'd like to, the second point, is go back to Vatican II Council when we acknowledge truth in other faiths and the progression of finding truth through other belief systems, and how before that the church was very contrary to that, and why that shifted.
Great questions. Let me address. There are huge topics, but I would say first of all, Matthew 7, the Lord says, "Don't judge." Okay, so to your point, in general, I would call to judge people. That's not mainly our call, or that's not mainly what we're to do. God is our judge, right? And that applies, of course, most strongly to judging people's intentions. I mean, at times you can see a moral behavior that is wrong, and say, this person is stealing from their family. Well, that's not the right thing to do. Of course, at times you can say that some behaviors are wrong, but the Lord says, be careful with judging the heart of the person. You don't know their circumstances. At times, society has to impart justice. So the thing I would say, Sebastian, is there are positions in life in which you are the judge. You're a professor. You have to judge your students' performance. You are a judge. You have to do justice in your court. Okay, you're a police officer. You have to judge the judgment because that's your vocation, it's your job, it's your obligation. Other than that, it's not our job to stand somewhere and kind of judge people in general like that. Okay, morality is given us to guide our own lives. Okay, and if we have a chance, a reasonable opportunity to counsel someone else or to kind of encourage them in a good way, of course we try to do that. But we're not there just to kind of condemn people, and that doesn't help. I think if someone is pursuing a bad lifestyle, someone is doing drugs, or if someone is is stealing, someone is cheating on others, someone is living in resentment, hatred. I'm not going to help them by just standing over and saying, you're such a bad person, you're a jerk, you should learn, you should be ashamed of yourself. Normally, that's not going to help them. I'm going to help them. They're going to be helped if I'm saying, hey, do you need someone to talk to? Can I help in some way? Or what's going on? Why are these things happening? And if you have the chance of maybe having a sort of friendship and confidence, maybe in that way you can help the person, encourage them to be better. But someone just standing outside and judging them, that's only for, I would say, in some case where the police officer needs to grab you and take you, but that to protect other people, right? But that's not normally the way we improve morally, right? to your other question about religions and Vatican II and the Church. So I think Newman is a great guide in that. If you want to read, if you want the in-depth literature for that, how he approaches that is called the Grammar of Assent. What Newman would say is a religion is not a simple statement. A religion is a system of a good number of propositions. So it's a whole system of many assertions or propositions. Catholicism, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism. What we would say is that, and many of these propositions could be right in a system, and some of them wrong. Almost any in a system, you're going to see that a lot of them are going to be right. People are not stupid. They wouldn't follow something that is completely senseless and makes no sense. If they follow a certain faith or philosophy or something, it's because they find a lot of truth in it. And it's likely there is truth. Now, that doesn't mean it's 100% in every state proposition it holds is a true thing, but it can have a lot of true affirmations and some flawed or some mistaken ones, or it can be lacking in some things that could be affirmed and it doesn't. So I think the balance here is, as a Catholic, what we believe basically is our creed, our faith, our commandments come from God. They're 100% true because they're not human invention. They are basically given us through the Holy Spirit. If we had intervened in fashioning them, they could be wrong, but we could certainly have introduced error. But because God has guaranteed, I want to speak to you, words that come from me. These have that guarantee of divine revelation, right? Same thing with Judaism, except their rejection of Christ. But up to the point, they have been guided by divine revelation. So now, I think there's two attitudes to that. You could say, let's be careful with the portion of error you find in other religions. Don't let people be confused, because they can say, well, Buddhism has many good things. Let's just embrace Buddhism, and then they sort of say, well, can we do this meditation of Mass instead of communion? Can we do this kind of Buddhist meditation? And the bishops say, no, that's not going to happen. So there's the error of saying, well, let's be friendly towards others because there's truth in them, and then kind of absorbing also things that are not right, or forgetting about the importance of important Catholic things. There could be the other opposite one, is saying that at times the Church took the past, maybe. Let's be very careful with the error that other people teach. And let's completely not talk about the true things they have believed or taught, right? In Islam, there's many good moral affirmations, right? Now, at times because of their rejection of Christianity, of the Messiah, and teaching of things that are erroneous, you could say, well, therefore, nothing about them is right. That's not the case. There's usually that combination, right? But I think that it's a more of a prudential, pastoral thing in the Church of what is important, what is more important to emphasize. And I would say there's always a balance, and not every person is qualified to have that, for example, interreligious dialogue or ecumenical conversation. You have to be very well grounded in your own faith to recognize what your faith is about, what is different from this other tradition. In what sense you could say that the other Christian tradition or other religion is right in this, or that you would pose objection because you think, well, that's not accurate. So you have to be very, very well grounded in that. So not everyone could have that balance. So I would say that's why there's that attitude and that difference. Because a religion is not a simple statement that is right or wrong. It's a whole system. Okay. Why don't I need to cut it there? Why don't we pause, take a break, and so we have time to, after the break, to go into the text for today and then work a bit on that. Okay.
The reading from C.S. Lewis's Abolition of Man, Men Without Chests. In The Abolition of Man, C.S. Lewis presents the consequences that a vision of the natural order has on education. To understand the fragment, you need to have in mind that Lewis is answering to two authors of a school book, the Green Book, whom he calls Gaius and Titius. The citation in question is the following. In their second chapter, Gaius and Titius quote the well-known story of Coleridge at the waterfall. you remember that there were two tourists present. That one called it sublime, and the other pretty, and that Coleridge mentally endorsed the first judgment and rejected the second with disgust. Gaius and Titius comment as follows. When the man said, "This is sublime," he appeared to be making a remark about the waterfall. Actually, he was not making a remark about the waterfall, but a remark about his own feelings. What he was saying was really, I have feelings associated in my mind with the word sublime, or shortly, I have sublime feelings. Lewis rejects the philosophical vision of these two authors and believes that there should be a correspondence between the interior world of a person and the objective order. Before any determined reality, there is an appropriate emotive reaction, and the other reactions that are not adequate. The goal of education is to teach people to feel correctly in the sense that the heart reacts in a way that corresponds with the objective situation. An educated and mature person is one that feels admiration for what is in fact admirable and feels disgust towards what is disgusting. Lewis continues, until quite modern times, all teachers and even all men believed the universe to be such that certain emotional reactions on our part could be either congruous or incongruous to it. Believed, in fact, that objects did not merely receive, but could merit our approval or disapproval, our reverence or our contempt. The reason why Coleridge agreed with the tourist who called the cataract sublime and disagreed with the one who called it pretty was, of course, that he believed inanimate nature to be such that certain responses could be more just or ordinate or appropriate to it than others. And he believed correctly that tourists thought the same.
The man who called the cataract sublime was not intending simply to describe his own emotions about it. He was also claiming that the object was one which merited those emotions. But for this claim, there would be nothing to agree or disagree about. To disagree with "this is pretty," if those words simply described the lady's feelings, would be absurd. If she had said, "I feel sick," Coleridge would hardly have replied, "No, I feel quite well." When Shelley, having compared the human sensibility to an Aeolian lyre, goes on to add that it differs from a lyre in having a power of internal adjustment, where it can accommodate its chords to the motions of that which strikes them, he is assuming the same belief. "Can you be righteous," asks Traherne, "unless you be just in rendering to things their due esteem? All things were made to be yours, and you were made to prize them according to their value." St. Augustine defines virtue as ordo amoris, the ordinate condition of the affections in which every object is accorded that kind of degree of love which is appropriate to it. Aristotle says that the aim of education is to make the pupil like and dislike what he ought. When the age for reflective thought comes, the pupil who has been thus trained in ordinate affections or just sentiments will easily find the first principles in ethics. But to the corrupt man, they will never be visible at all, and he can make no progress in that science. Plato before him had said the same. The little human animal will not at first have the right responses. It must be trained to feel pleasure, liking, disgust, and hatred at those things which really are pleasant, likable, disgusting, and hateful. In the Republic, the well-nurtured youth is one who would see most clearly whatever was amiss in ill-made works of man or ill-grown works of nature, and with a just distaste would blame and hate the ugly even from his earnest years, and would give delighted praise to beauty, receiving it into his soul and being nourished by it, so that he becomes a man of gentle heart. All this before he is of an age to reason, so that when reason at length comes to him, then, bred as he has been, he will hold out his hands in welcome and recognize her because of the affinity he bears to her. In early Hinduism, that conduct in men, which can be called good, consists in conformity to, or almost participation in, the artha, that great ritual or pattern of nature and supernature which is revealed alike in the cosmic order, the moral virtues, and the ceremonial of the temple. Righteousness, correctness, order, the artha, is constantly identified with satya, or truth, correspondence to reality. As Plato said that the good was beyond existence, and Wordsworth, that through virtue the stars were strong, so the Indian masters say that the gods themselves are born of the artha and obey it.
The Chinese also speak of a great thing, the greatest thing, called the Tao. It is the reality beyond all predicates, the abyss that was before the Creator himself. It is nature. It is the way, the road. It is the way in which the universe goes on, the way in which things everlastingly emerge, stilly and tranquilly, into space and time. It is also the way in which every man should tread in imitation of that cosmic and supercosmic progression, conforming all activities to that great exemplar. In ritual, says the Analects, in its harmony with nature that is prized. The ancient Jews likewise praised the law as being true. This conception, in all its forms, Platonic, Aristotelian, Stoic, Christian, and Oriental alike, I shall henceforth refer to for brevity, simply as the Tao. Some of the accounts of it, which I have quoted, will seem perhaps to many of you merely quaint or even magical. But what is common to them all is something that we cannot neglect. It is the doctrine of objective value, the belief that certain attitudes are really true and others really false, to the kind of thing the universe is and the kind of things we are. Those who know the Tao can hold that to call children delightful or old men venerable is not simply to record a psychological fact about our own parental or filial emotions at the moment, but to recognize a quality which demands a certain response from us, whether we make it or not. I myself do not enjoy the society of small children. Because I speak from within the Tao, I recognize this as a defect in me. Just as many men may have to recognize that he is tone deaf or colorblind. And because our approvals and disapprovals are thus recognitions of objective value or responses to an objective order, therefore emotional states can be in harmony with reason. When we feel liking for what ought to be approved, or out of harmony with reason, when we perceive that liking is due but cannot feel it. No, emotion is in itself a judgment. In that sense, all emotions and sentiments are illogical. But they can be
there should be a hyphen there, so not logical, aside from logic.
right. But they can be reasonable or unreasonable, as they conform to reason or fail to conform. The heart never takes the place of the head, but it can and should obey it.
Over against this stands the world of the Green Book. In it, the very possibility of a sentiment being reasonable or even unreasonable has been excluded from the outset. It can be reasonable or unreasonable only if it conforms or fails to conform to something else. To say that the cataract is sublime means saying that our emotion of humility is appropriate or ordinate to the reality, and thus to speak of something else besides the emotion. Just as to say that a shoe fits is to speak not only of shoes but of feet. But this reference to something beyond the emotion is what Gaius and Titius exclude from every sentence containing a predicate of value. Such statements for them refer solely to the emotion. Now, the emotion, thus considered by itself, cannot be either in agreement or disagreement with reason. It is irrational, not as parallelism is irrational, but as a physical event is irrational. It does not rise even to the dignity of error. On this view, the world of facts without one trace of value and the world of feelings without one trace of truth or falsehood, justice or injustice, confronts one another, and no rapprochement is possible. Hence, the educational problem is wholly different according as you stand within or without the Tao. For those within, the task is to train in the pupil those responses which are in themselves appropriate, whether anyone is making them or not, and in making which the very nature of man consists. Those without, if they are logical, must regard all sentiments as equally non-rational, as mere mists between us and the real objects. As a result, they must either decide to remove all sentiments as far as possible from the pupil's mind, or else to encourage some sentiments for reasons that have nothing to do with their intrinsic justness or ordinacy. The latter course involves them in the questionable process of creating in others by suggestion or incantation a mirage which their own reason has successfully dissipated.
Perhaps this will become clearer if we take a concrete instance. When a Roman father told his son that it was a sweet and seemly thing to die for his country, he believed what he said. He was communicating to the son an emotion which he himself shared and which he believed to be in accord with the value which his judgment discerned in noble death. He was giving the boy the best he had, giving of his spirit to humanize him, as he had given of his body to beget him. But Gaius and Titius cannot believe that in calling such a death sweet and seemly, they would be saying something important about something. Their method of debunking would cry out against them if they attempted to do so. For death is not something to eat and therefore cannot be dolce in the literal sense. It is unlikely that the real sensations preceding it will be dolce even by analogy. And as for decorum, that is the only word describing how some other people feel about your death when they happen to think of it, which won't be often, and will certainly do you no good. There are only two courses open to Gaius and Titius. Either they must go the whole way and debunk this sentiment as any other, or must set themselves to work to produce from outside a sentiment which they believe to be of no value to the pupil and which may cost him his life, because it is useful to us, the survivors, that our young men should feel it. If they embark on this course, the difference between the old and the new education will be an important one. Where the old initiated, the new merely conditions. The old dealt with its pupils as grown birds deal with young birds when they teach them to fly. The new deals with them more as a poultry keeper deals with young birds, making them thus for purposes of which the birds know nothing. In a word, the old was a kind of propagation, men transmitting manhood to men. The new is merely propaganda. It is to their credit that Gaius and Titius embraced the first alternative. The propaganda is their abomination, not because their own philosophy gives a ground for condemning it or anything else, but because they are better than their principles.
They probably have some vague notion, I will examine it in my next lecture, that valor and good faith and justice could be sufficiently commended to the pupil on what they would call rational or biological or modern grounds if it should ever become necessary. In the meantime, they leave the matter alone and get on with the business of debunking. But this course, though less inhuman, is not less disastrous than the opposite alternative of cynical propaganda. Let us suppose for a moment that the harder virtues could really be theoretically justified with no appeal to objective value. It still remains true that no justification of virtue will enable a man to be virtuous. Without the aid of trained emotions, the intellect is powerless against the animal organism. I had sooner play cards against a man who was quite skeptical about ethics, but bred to believe that a gentleman does not cheat, than against an irreproachable moral philosopher who had been brought up among sharpers. In battle, it is not syllogisms that will keep the reluctant nerves and muscles to their post in the third hour of the bombardment. The crudest sentimentalism, such as Gaius and Titius would wince at, about a flag or a country or a regiment, will be of more use. We were told it all long ago by Plato. As the king governs by his executive, so reason in man must rule the mere appetites by means of the spirited element. The head rules the belly through the chest, the seat, as Alanus tells us, of magnanimity, of emotions organized by trained habit into stable sentiments. The chest, magnanimity, sentiment, these are the indispensable liaison officers between cerebral man and visceral man. It may even be said that it is by this middle element that man is man, for by his intellect he is mere spirit, and by his appetite mere animal. The operation of the Green Book and its kind is to produce what may be called men without chests. It is an outrage that they should be commonly spoken of as intellectuals. This gives them the chance to say that he who attacks them attacks intelligence. It is not so. They are not distinguished from other men by any unusual skill in finding truth, nor any virginal ardor to pursue her. Indeed, it would be strange if they were. A persevering devotion to truth, a nice sense of intellectual honor, cannot be long maintained without the aid of a sentiment which Gaius and Titius could debunk as easily as any other. It is not excess of thought, but defect of fertile and generous emotion that marks them out. Their heads are no bigger than the ordinary. It is the atrophy of the chest beneath that makes them seem so.
And all the time, such as is tragic comedy of our situation, we continue to clamor for those very qualities which we are rendering impossible. You can hardly open a periodical without coming across this statement that what our civilization needs is more drive, or dynamism, or self-sacrifice, or creativity. In a sort of ghastly simplicity, we remove the organ and demand the function. We make men without chests and expect of them virtue and enterprise. We laugh at honor, and we are shocked to find traitors in our midst. We castrate and bid the geldings be fruitful.
Thank you. Thank you, Captain David. He's a great writer, very ironic in this chapter. So why don't we take, we don't have much time left, but why don't we take the last maybe 15 minutes we have until the hour. Question, I don't know if you have the same questions I have, but number 3 says, how does C.S. Lewis argue in favor of the Tao or an objective moral order? You have that question, right?
Yeah.
How would you argue in favor of such moral order? What is your experience of it? Of course, I give you also some freedom to maybe discuss things that stood out to you in this lecture and in this text, but if you want to delve into that question, that's the one I recommend for our final minutes together tonight. Class will read text number 3 by C.S. Lewis, Mere Christianity. We'll read the chapter on the 3 parts of morality. Now, this one is not so difficult, so if you want to read it ahead of time to prepare, it's fine, but I think it's easier to grasp than other texts. So, but still, and the topic will be a relationship with God. Okay. So we'll begin with Hey Mary.
What was that chapter? I'm sorry.
The chapter 3, text number 3. I think topic number 3 is relationship with God, right? And then chapter 3, text number 3 is C.S. Lewis, Mere Christianity, on the 3 parts of morality. So let's pray. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.